The diplomatic vessel Harmony's Edge drifted through the void between Earth and the Zephyrian homeworld, its hull gleaming under the light of distant stars. Inside the observation deck, 18-year-old Marcus Chen pressed his face against the reinforced viewing port, watching the alien ship approach with a mixture of awe and nervous excitement. "First time seeing a Zephyrian vessel, son?" asked Ambassador Harrison, adjusting his formal diplomatic robes. The older man had made this journey dozens of times, but Marcus could still see wonder in his weathered eyes. "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, his voice barely above a whisper. He was the youngest member of the diplomatic mission, selected for his exceptional linguistic abilities and cultural studies scores. What he lacked in experience, he made up for in raw talent and enthusiasm. The Zephyrian ship was unlike anything in human space. Where human vessels were angular and practical, this craft flowed like liquid metal, its surface rippling with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in rhythm with some alien heartbeat. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "Remember," Ambassador Harrison said, placing a firm hand on Marcus's shoulder, "this is more than just a trade negotiation. The Zephyrians are testing us. They want to see if humanity is worthy of joining the Galactic Coalition. One wrong move, one cultural misstep, and we could set back human advancement by decades." Marcus nodded solemnly. He had spent 3 years studying Zephyrian culture, language, and customs. He knew that their society valued honor above all else, that they communicated as much through subtle bioluminescent displays as through words, and that their royal family had ruled for over 2,000 Earth years. What he didn't know was how they would react to humans in person. The docking procedure took nearly an hour. Zephyrian technology operated on principles that human science was only beginning to understand. When the airlock finally cycled open, Marcus felt his heart hammering against his ribs. The artificial gravity shifted slightly as they crossed the threshold, and suddenly they were breathing alien air in an alien ship. The Zephyrian delegation waited in what could only be described as a living chamber. The walls pulsed with soft, organic light, and the floor felt warm and slightly yielding underfoot. At the center of the group stood Emperor Vorthak, his 7-foot frame draped in robes that seemed to be woven from starlight itself. His skin held a faint blue luminescence, and his large, dark eyes regarded the humans with careful interest. "Welcome, children of Earth," the Emperor said, his words translated through the universal communicators each diplomat wore. "We greet you in the spirit of understanding." Ambassador Harrison stepped forward and performed the traditional Zephyrian bow, a complex gesture that Marcus had practiced hundreds of times. "Your Imperial Majesty, we are honored by your presence and grateful for this opportunity to forge bonds between our peoples." The formal greetings continued for what felt like hours. Marcus remained silent as befitted his junior status, but his eyes roamed the chamber, taking in every detail. He noticed the way the Zephyrian skin patterns shifted subtly with their emotions, how their movements flowed like water, and how they seemed to communicate volumes with the slightest gesture. It was during the ceremonial meal that Marcus first saw her. Princess Lyranel entered the dining chamber like starlight made manifest. She was young by Zephyrian standards, perhaps equivalent to 20 in human years, and her bioluminescent patterns were more vibrant than any Marcus had seen. Where her father's light was steady and regal, hers danced and shifted like aurora in a night sky. Her eyes, a deep violet that seemed to hold galaxies, swept across the human delegation before settling on Marcus. For a moment, time seemed suspended. Marcus felt as if he were drowning in those alien eyes, and he could swear he saw something there. Curiosity, perhaps, or recognition of a kindred spirit. The princess's light patterns shifted to what Marcus recognized as surprise, then something that might have been amusement. "Father," she said, her voice like music through the translators, "might I be introduced to the young human scholar? His linguistic patterns are quite fascinating." Emperor Vorthak's eyes flicked between his daughter and Marcus, and for a moment his own patterns shifted to what Marcus had learned indicated mild concern. "Princess Lyranel, this is Marcus Chen, a junior member of the Earth delegation. He has studied our language and customs." Marcus managed to perform the appropriate bow, though his hands were trembling slightly. "Your Highness, I am deeply honored to meet you." Princess Lyranel stepped closer, and Marcus caught a scent like ozone and flowers. "Tell me, Marcus Chen of Earth, what do you think of our ship?" "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," Marcus replied honestly. "It's like watching poetry in motion through space." The princess's patterns brightened considerably and she actually laughed. A sound like silver bells. Poetry in motion. I like that phrase. We must speak more during your visit. Over the following days, Marcus found himself drawn into increasingly frequent conversations with Princess Lyranel. She was brilliant, curious about human culture, and possessed a sharp wit that kept him constantly on his toes. They discussed everything from interstellar navigation to ancient Earth literature, from Zephyrian art to human music. Your species fascinates me, she told him one evening as they stood in the ship's observation garden, surrounded by bioluminescent plants that responded to their presence. You are so young, yet you reach for the stars with such determination. Most species take millennia to develop space travel. Humans achieved it in centuries. We're impatient, Marcus said with a smile. We see something we want and we go after it, consequences be damned. Is that what you are doing now? Princess Lyranel asked, her patterns shifting to something Marcus couldn't quite interpret. Going after something you want. Marcus looked at her, this incredible being from another world, and felt something shift inside his chest. Princess, But before he could finish his thought, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The princess's patterns immediately shifted to alarm, and she pressed her hand to a communication panel that had grown from the wall. Pirates, she said, her face grim. A Korthax raiding fleet. They've been harassing shipping lanes for months. Through the transparent walls of the observation garden, Marcus could see the attacking ships, ugly, aggressive vessels that moved like predators stalking prey. The Zephyrian ship shuddered as the first energy weapons found their mark. We need to get you and your delegation to safety, Princess Lyranel said, but Marcus was already shaking his head. I'm not hiding while you're in danger, he said firmly.
What can I do to help?
The Zephyrian ship lurched violently as another volley of plasma fire struck its organic hull. Marcus steadied himself against the living wall, feeling it pulse with what seemed like pain. Princess Lyranel's bioluminescent patterns had shifted to deep crimson, a color Marcus had learned indicated extreme stress or anger. The Korthax are ruthless scavengers, she explained as they hurried through corridors that seemed to reshape themselves around them. They prey on diplomatic vessels because they know we carry valuable trade goods and cultural artifacts. Marcus kept pace with her, his mind racing. He had studied dozens of species during his preparation for this mission, and the Korthax were among the most feared. They were a nomadic race of pirates who had been exiled from the Galactic Coalition centuries ago for their barbaric practices. They reached the command center, a vast chamber where the ship's nervous system converged into a complex web of bioneural networks. Emperor Vorthax stood at the center, his hands pressed against what appeared to be a living control console. His patterns flickered with deep concentration as he communed with the ship's consciousness. Status report, Princess Lyranel called out. 4 Korthax assault vessels, replied Commander Zekthai, his scarred carapace marking him as a veteran warrior. They've disabled our primary weapons and are preparing to board. Our escort fighters are outnumbered 3-1. Through the chamber's organic viewports, Marcus could see the battle raging in space. Sleek Zephyrian fighters danced through the void, their movements graceful even in combat, but they were clearly overwhelmed by the crude but effective Korthax ships. We should retreat, Ambassador Harrison said, having arrived with the rest of the human delegation. This isn't our fight. With respect, Ambassador, Marcus said, stepping forward. But that's exactly the kind of thinking that will convince the Zephyrians we're not ready for the coalition. All eyes turned to him, and Marcus felt the weight of the moment. The Zephyrians value honor and courage. If we run now, we prove we're just another species that talks big, but runs when things get dangerous. Emperor Vorthax's patterns shifted to what Marcus recognized as intrigue. What do you propose, young human? Marcus looked at the tactical display, his mind working furiously. The Korthax are expecting a traditional Zephyrian response, honor-bound, predictable. But humans, we fight dirty when we have to. Marcus, Ambassador Harrison warned, but Princess Lyranel raised a hand for silence. Explain, she said simply. Their ships are designed to counter Zephyrian biotechnology, Marcus continued, pointing at the display. But they've never fought humans before. We think differently, fight differently. If you can get me to one of your fighter craft, I might be able to even the odds. Commander Zekthai's patterns flashed with what Marcus hoped was amusement rather than derision. You have never piloted a Zephyrian fighter, human. The neural interface alone would overwhelm most alien minds. Then I'll have to be tougher than most aliens, Marcus replied with a grin that felt more confident than he actually was. Princess Lyranel studied him for a long moment, her patterns cycling through colors Marcus couldn't identify. Finally, she turned to her father. I request permission to accompany the human. My fighter has a dual interface system designed for diplomatic missions. Absolutely not, Emperor Vorthak said immediately. I will not risk my daughter on an untested strategy. Father, with respect. This is exactly the kind of moment that defines a species, Princess Lyranel replied, her patterns now showing the royal steel that ran in her bloodline. The humans are offering to risk their lives for us. How can we ask for less from ourselves? Another massive impact shook the ship, and Commander Zekthai reported that the Korthax were beginning their boarding procedures. Time was running out. Emperor Vorthak closed his eyes, his patterns dimming as he reached some internal decision.
Very well.
But you will follow Commander Zekthai's tactical instructions precisely. Minutes later, Marcus found himself being fitted with a bio-neural interface headset in the ship's fighter bay. The technology felt alien against his skin, warm and slightly wet like touching a living thing. Princess Lyranel worked beside him, her movements quick and efficient. The neural link will be intense, she warned as they climbed into her personal fighter, a craft that seemed more grown than built. Try not to think too hard about controlling the ship. Let instinct guide you. The cockpit sealed around them with an organic whisper, and suddenly Marcus felt the ship's consciousness pressing against the edges of his mind. It was overwhelming, like trying to drink from a waterfall while swimming upstream. His vision blurred, and for a moment he thought he might pass out. Breathe, Princess Lyranel said softly, her hand touching his shoulder. Feel the ship, don't fight it. Gradually, Marcus began to understand. The fighter wasn't just a machine to be controlled. It was a partner to be danced with. He let his human analytical mind step back and allowed something deeper, more instinctual to take over. The launch was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. Instead of the violent acceleration he expected, the fighter seemed to flow from the bay like a fish entering water. Space opened up around them, and suddenly they were in the middle of the battle. Korthak's assault team approaching from Vector 7, Commander Zekthai's voice crackled through their communications. Princess, recommend you maintain safe distance. Negative, Commander, Princess Lyranel replied, her patterns visible even through the interface. We're implementing the human strategy. Marcus felt the fighter respond to his thoughts, and he grinned fiercely. Princess, can this ship do something the Korthax have never seen before? What did you have in mind? Something completely insane, Marcus said, and dove their fighter directly toward the largest Korthax vessel. The enemy ship was a monstrosity of sharp edges and brutal efficiency, its hull scarred from countless battles. Weapons fire reached out toward them like deadly fingers, but Marcus flew the Zephyrian fighter in patterns no sane pilot would attempt. He spun and rolled, using the ship's biomechanical nature to perform maneuvers that would have torn apart any conventional craft. Marcus, what are you doing? Princess Lyranel gasped as they threaded between two massive plasma bursts. Something they won't expect, Marcus replied, and suddenly cut all power to their engines. The fighter went into freefall, tumbling end over end directly toward the Korthax ship's primary weapon array. To any observer, it would look like they had lost control, like they were about to crash and die. The Korthax gunners hesitated, confused by what they were seeing. At the last possible moment, Marcus brought the engines back online and used the fighter's biomechanical flexibility to bend their trajectory in a way that should have been impossible. They shot along the length of the Korthax ship's hull, so close that Marcus could see individual pirates through the viewports, their savage faces twisted in shock. Now, Marcus said, and Princess Lyranel fired everything they had directly into the ship's reactor core. The explosion lit up space like a newborn star, and the largest Korthax vessel disintegrated in a chain reaction that took out one of its escorts. The remaining two ships, suddenly faced with an enemy that fought unlike anything they had ever encountered, made the wise decision to retreat into hyperspace. As they docked back aboard the Zephyrian vessel, Marcus felt the adrenaline slowly leaving his system. His hands were shaking, and he realized how close they had come to dying. That was the most insane piece of flying I have ever witnessed, Princess Lyranel said, but she was laughing. My father is going to want to study your tactical thinking for months. Marcus looked at her. This incredible being who had trusted him enough to risk her life on his crazy plan, and felt something click into place in his chest. Princess, when this diplomatic mission is over, I have to return to Earth. I know, she said softly, her patterns dimming with what might have been sadness. But I'll come back, Marcus said with sudden conviction. However long it takes, whatever I have to do, I'll become worthy of you and I'll come back. Princess Lyranel stared at him for a long moment, her patterns cycling through colors he couldn't interpret. Finally, she smiled. I'll be waiting, Marcus Chen of Earth, but don't take too long. Even a princess has her limits. 5 years had passed since Marcus Chen last saw the bioluminescent corridors of a Zephyrian vessel, but the memory burned as bright as ever in his mind. Earth had changed dramatically since his return from that first diplomatic mission. The successful negotiations had opened trade routes that brought alien technology streaming into human space, accelerating human development at an unprecedented rate. Marcus stood in the observation deck of the Earth Defense Force's newest flagship, the Indomitable, watching the construction crews putting finishing touches on humanity's first truly interstellar battle fleet. The ships were sleek and powerful, incorporating lessons learned from a dozen alien species but distinctly human in their aggressive design philosophy. Admiral Chen, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Walsh, his aide-de-camp. Marcus still felt strange hearing his rank. At 23, he was the youngest admiral in human history, promoted for his unique understanding of alien psychology and his proven combat effectiveness. Put it through, Sarah, Marcus said, turning from the viewport. The holographic display materialized, showing the stern face of Fleet Admiral Morrison, the man who had taken Marcus under his wing after his return from the Zephyrian mission. Marcus, we've got a situation developing in the Proxima sector, Morrison said without preamble. The Korthax have united under a new warlord, someone calling himself Drakmor the Destroyer. They've been systematically attacking Coalition shipping and have just hit 3 Zephyrian trade convoys. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Casualties? Heavy, but that's not the worst part. Intelligence suggests they're building up for a major assault on the Zephyrian homeworld itself. If they succeed, it could destabilize the entire coalition. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. An attack on the Zephyrian homeworld meant an attack on Princess Lyranel. In the 5 years since his return, he had thrown himself into military training and strategic studies with single-minded determination. He had earned his rank through a combination of brilliant tactical thinking and an almost supernatural ability to understand and counter alien military doctrine. But underneath it all, everything he had done was driven by his promise to return to her. What are our orders, Admiral? Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. The Coalition has formally requested human assistance. We're sending the 3rd Fleet under your command to coordinate with Zephyrian forces. You leave in 6 hours. After the transmission ended, Marcus stood alone in his ready room, staring at a holographic photo of Princess Lyranel that he kept on his desk. It had been taken during a cultural exchange ceremony, and her bioluminescent patterns showed the serene joy she felt when discussing art or philosophy. He had carried that image through every battle, every training exercise, every long night of studying alien tactics. Sir, Lieutenant Commander Walsh's voice came through the intercom. The fleet commanders are assembled for briefing. Marcus straightened his uniform and walked to the fleet briefing room. The assembled captains represented the best humanity had to offer, men and women who had proven themselves in the brutal expansion wars against the hegemony, the delicate negotiations with the crystal entities, and countless smaller conflicts that had forged humanity into a galactic power. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus began, activating the 3-dimensional tactical display. We're going to war with the Korthax and we're going to win. But more than that, we're going to send a message to the entire galaxy about what happens when you threaten humanity's allies. Captain Rodriguez of the Vengeance leaned forward. Intel reports suggest the Korthax fleet outnumbers us 2-1, Admiral. Their new warlord has been raiding for months, accumulating ships and resources. Numbers are irrelevant, Marcus replied with confidence that surprised even him. The Korthax fight like animals. All aggression and no strategy. They've been successful because they've been picking off isolated targets. But now they're facing a coordinated response from species that have learned to work together. Marcus manipulated the display, showing projected Korthax attack patterns. Drakmor thinks like a traditional raider. He'll try to overwhelm the Zephyrian defenses with brute force, counting on fear and chaos to carry the day. What he doesn't understand is that he's not just fighting Zephyrians anymore. The journey to Zephyrian space took 3 days at maximum hyperspace velocity. Marcus spent the time refining battle plans and coordinating with coalition forces. The Andorian consortium had committed a squadron of their elite stealth ships. The Vagan Republic was providing long-range artillery support, and even the enigmatic Ethereals had offered tactical intelligence. But it was the message from Emperor Vorthak that affected Marcus most deeply. Admiral Chen, the Emperor's image said from the communication array, his bioluminescent patterns showing deep respect, "I greet you as both ally and friend. Your reputation as a tactical genius has spread throughout the coalition, and we are grateful for humanity's assistance in this dark hour." The Emperor paused, and his patterns shifted to something more personal. "My daughter has asked me to convey her regards. She has followed your career with great interest and looks forward to your arrival." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. After 5 years of pushing himself to become worthy of his promise, he was finally going to see her again. The Zephyrian homeworld was even more beautiful than Marcus remembered. The planet seemed to glow with its own inner light, its cities built from living crystal that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns visible even from orbit. But now that beauty was marred by the presence of defensive platforms and patrol ships, preparing for the coming storm, Marcus transported down to the planetary surface for a strategy meeting with the coalition commanders. The Zephyrian military headquarters was a marvel of organic architecture, its walls alive with data streams and tactical displays that grew and shifted as information flowed through them. He saw her before she saw him. Princess Lyra Nell stood at the center of the command chamber, her bearing regal but her patterns showing the strain of command. She had grown into her role as a military leader, Marcus realized. Where once she had been curious and philosophical, now she radiated competence and authority. But when she turned and their eyes met across the crowded room, her patterns immediately shifted to something that made Marcus's breath catch. Joy. Pure, radiant joy. "Admiral Chen," she said formally as he approached, but her patterns were dancing with barely contained emotion. "Welcome to Zephyr Prime." "Your Highness," Marcus replied with a deep bow. "It's an honor to serve alongside Zephyrian forces again." They maintained the formal protocol required by the situation, but Marcus could see in her eyes the same feelings that had been driving him for 5 years. When the briefing concluded and the other commanders filed out to prepare their forces, Marcus and Princess Lyra Nell found themselves alone in the garden courtyard outside the command center. "You came back," she said simply, her patterns now showing the full spectrum of her emotions. "I promised I would," Marcus replied, "though I have to admit, I was hoping it would be under better circumstances." Princess Lyra Nell laughed, the sound just as beautiful as he remembered. "You mean you didn't plan to return as a famous admiral leading a fleet to save my homeworld? How terribly unromantic of you." Before Marcus could reply, alarms began sounding throughout the complex. A young Zephyrian officer rushed into the courtyard, his patterns flashing urgent red. "Your Highness, Admiral, long-range sensors have detected the Korthax fleet. They're 2 hours out and coming in fast." Marcus felt the familiar calm that settled over him before battle. "How many ships?" "Over 300 vessels, sir. Drakmor has assembled the largest pirate fleet in recorded history." Princess Lyra Nell's pattern shifted to grim determination. "Then we'd better make sure it's also the last pirate fleet in recorded history." Marcus nodded, his mind already racing through tactical possibilities. "Princess, I need to ask something of you." "Anything. Trust me. What I'm about to propose is going to sound completely insane, but I need you to trust that I know what I'm doing." Princess Lyra Nell studied his face for a moment, then smiled. "Marcus Chen, 5 years ago you convinced me to fly directly at a Korthax battleship with nothing but engines and weapons. I think I can handle whatever you have in mind." Marcus grinned back at her, feeling the same reckless confidence that had carried him through that first desperate battle. "Good. Because we're about to show Drakmor and the entire galaxy what happens when you threaten the people humanity cares about." The Coalition war room buzzed with tension as the largest combined fleet in galactic history prepared for battle. Representatives from 17 different species crowded around the central tactical display, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, hums, and bioluminescent flashes. At the center of it all, Admiral Marcus Chen stood calmly reviewing the final deployment orders. "Admiral, the Korthax fleet has dropped out of hyperspace," reported Captain Singh from the human destroyer Relentless. "Confirmed count 347 vessels. Drakmore's flagship is a converted coalition dreadnought. Must have been captured during the siege of Altair." Marcus studied the incoming formation through the tactical display. The Korthax fleet moved like a swarm of angry insects, their ships lacking any coordinated formation. It was exactly what he had expected from pirates, even ones united under a single warlord. "Princess Lyranel, are your bioships ready for the maneuver we discussed?" Marcus asked. The princess nodded, her patterns showing confident determination. "My pilots think you're insane, but they're ready to follow your orders." "Admiral Chen," interrupted Commander Thexkala of the Andorian forces, his crystalline form chiming with concern. "Your strategy violates every accepted principle of space combat. Deliberately allowing the enemy to surround us is tactical suicide." Marcus turned to address the assembled commanders, his voice carrying the authority he had earned through 5 years of impossible victories. "Commanders, the Korthax have spent centuries perfecting their tactics against species that fight conventionally. They expect us to meet them head-on, ship against ship until one side breaks. That's how they've won every major engagement in their history." He manipulated the display, showing projected battle formations. "But we're not going to give them the fight they're expecting. We're going to give them something completely different, something that will shatter their entire understanding of warfare." An hour later, Marcus stood on the bridge of the Indomitable as the coalition fleet moved into what appeared to be a classic defensive formation around Zephyr Prime. To any outside observer, they looked like they were preparing for a desperate last stand against overwhelming odds. Korthax fleet closing to engagement. "Range," reported Lieutenant Commander Walsh. "They're moving exactly as predicted, concentrated. Assault formation aimed at breaking our center." Through the main view screen, Marcus could see the Korthax armada approaching like a tide of destruction. Their ships were crude but effective, bristling with weapons and covered in the trophies of their countless victories. At the center of the formation, Drakmore's flagship loomed like a dark star, its hull painted with the skulls of defeated enemies. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen," Marcus announced over the fleet communication channel. "Remember, timing is everything. We get one chance at this." The first Korthax ships opened fire at maximum range, their energy weapons reaching out like claws to rake the coalition formation. The human ships absorbed the punishment stoically, their advanced shields holding against the assault. But Marcus wasn't interested in a slugfest. "Princess, execute Phase 1, he ordered. Suddenly, the Zephyrian bioships began to behave in a way no one had ever seen before. Instead of maintaining formation, they scattered in all directions, apparently in full retreat. Their bioluminescent patterns flashed what appeared to be panic and desperation as they fled the battlefield. "What are they doing?" demanded Commander Thexkala over the communication channel. "The Zephyrians are retreating." "Negative, Commander," Marcus replied calmly. "They're repositioning." The Korthax fleet surged forward, sensing victory. Their formation began to spread out as they pursued the fleeing bioships, exactly as Marcus had calculated. Drakmore's voice boomed across all frequencies, transmitted in the Pigeon Galactic common favored by pirates. "Run, you cowards. Drakmore the Destroyer claims this world for the Korthax Empire. Your precious coalition cannot save you." But Marcus was watching his tactical display with the satisfaction of a chess master, seeing his opponent walk into a trap. The Korthax ships were now spread across a vast area of space, their formation completely broken as they chased individual Zephyrian vessels. "Phase 2, Marcus announced. The retreating Zephyrian bioships suddenly wheeled around with impossible grace, their living hulls allowing them to change direction in ways that would have torn apart any mechanical vessel. But they weren't attacking. Instead, they began weaving between the Korthax ships in complex patterns like dancers performing an intricate ballet. "Admiral, what are they doing?" asked Captain Rodriguez. Marcus smiled grimly. "They're painting targets." Each Zephyrian bioship was trailing an invisible marker, a quantum signature that only coalition sensors could detect. As they wove through the scattered Korthax formation, they were creating a three-dimensional map of enemy positions that was accurate down to the meter. "All human vessels, execute Phoenix Protocol," Marcus ordered. The human ships had been holding back, their weapons powered down to minimal signatures. Now they suddenly blazed to full power, their reactors screaming as they channeled massive amounts of energy into their most devastating weapons. But instead of firing conventionally, they used the quantum signatures painted by the Zephyrian ships to target every Korthax vessel simultaneously. The result was devastation on a scale never before seen in galactic warfare. Precisely aimed energy beams reached out across vast distances, guided by the quantum markers to strike every enemy ship at exactly the same moment. The Korthax fleet spread out in pursuit formation, found themselves under attack from impossible angles with no way to coordinate a defense. Impossible. Drakmor's voice raged across the communication channels. How are they targeting us through our jamming fields? Phase 3, Marcus announced, and the Andorian stealth ships materialized out of nowhere. The crystalline vessels had been positioned hours before the battle began, hidden in the quantum shadows created by Zephyr Prime's unique magnetic field. Now they struck like ghosts, their exotic weapons tearing through Korthax hulls while remaining virtually invisible to enemy sensors. The Korthax formation collapsed into chaos. Ships collided with each other as they tried to escape the invisible attackers. Command and control broke down as the pirates reverted to their basic nature. Every ship for itself. This is Admiral Chen to all Korthax vessels. Marcus broadcast on all frequencies. You have one chance to surrender. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded, or we will destroy every ship in your fleet. Drakmor's response came in the form of a massive energy blast aimed directly at the Indomitable. The human flagship's shields flared but held, and Marcus felt his expression harden. I was hoping you'd say that, he said quietly. Target the flagship, Marcus ordered. Full power to forward batteries. But before the human ships could fire, Princess Lyranel's voice came over the communication channel. Admiral, request permission to engage the enemy flagship directly. Marcus looked at the tactical display. The princess was piloting her personal biofighter, the same craft they had flown together 5 years ago. She was alone, racing toward a ship that outmassed her by a factor of thousands. Princess, that's suicide, Marcus said. No, she replied, and Marcus could hear the smile in her voice. That's justice. Her biofighter moved with impossible grace, weaving through the defensive fire from Drakmor's flagship. The living ship seemed to anticipate every shot, dancing through space like a leaf on the wind. As she closed with the massive vessel, Princess Lyranel activated a weapon that Marcus had never seen before. The biofighter's hull began to glow with intense bioluminescent light. And suddenly it wasn't just a ship anymore. It was a living torpedo, its entire structure converting itself into a single devastating weapon. The princess had turned herself and her ship into a guided projectile designed to penetrate the heaviest armor. Lyra, Marcus shouted, but it was too late. The biofighter struck Drakmor's flagship like a spear of living light, penetrating deep into the ship's hull before detonating. The explosion tore the massive vessel apart from the inside, its reactor core going critical in a chain reaction that lit up space like a second sun. Marcus stared at the expanding debris field where Princess Lyranel had been, feeling something cold and terrible settling in his chest. Around them, the remaining Korthax ships were surrendering or fleeing. But he barely noticed. Sir, Lieutenant Commander Walsh said quietly, we're receiving a signal on Zephyrian biofrequencies. The communication panel came to life with a familiar voice, weak but unmistakably alive. Admiral Chen, this is Princess Lyranel. I could really use a pickup about now. Marcus nearly collapsed with relief. Princess! How did you survive that? Zephyrian bioships have detachable life pods, she replied, sounding amused despite her exhaustion. Though I have to admit the timing was a bit closer than I would have preferred. As rescue ships moved to collect the princess and the remaining Korthax survivors, Marcus realized that they had done more than just win a battle. They had proven that the coalition could work together in ways that made them stronger than the sum of their parts. Humanity had found its place among the stars not by conquering, but by learning to fight alongside species that shared their values. The victory celebration aboard the Zephyrian homeworld lasted for 3 days, but Marcus Chen found himself drawn away from the festivities. He stood in the palace gardens, a vast bioluminescent paradise where living crystal trees created patterns of light that shifted with the emotions of those who walked among them. The gardens were responding to his inner turmoil, casting deep blues and purples that reflected his troubled thoughts. Princess Lyranel found him there, as he somehow knew she would. Her recovery from the battle had been remarkable. Zephyrian physiology was more resilient than human, and their biotechnology had accelerated her healing. But Marcus could see new depth in her violet eyes, the kind that came from facing death and choosing life. "The gardens know you're worried about something," she said, settling beside him on a bench that seemed to grow from the living ground. "They've been broadcasting your emotional state across half the sector." Marcus managed a weak smile. "Sorry, I'm still getting used to how everything here is connected." "It's not the gardens I'm concerned about," Princess Lyranel said gently. "It's you. You've accomplished everything you set out to do. You've become one of the most respected military leaders in the galaxy. You've helped forge an alliance that will keep the peace for generations, and you've kept your promise to return. So why do you look like someone who's lost rather than won?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, watching the bioluminescent patterns shift around them. "Because I realize I never thought past the promise," he finally said. "For 5 years, everything I did was focused on becoming worthy of you, on earning the right to come back. But I never actually thought about what would happen after I returned." Princess Lyranel's patterns shifted to something Marcus had learned meant gentle amusement. "Are you having second thoughts about wanting to court an alien princess?" "No," Marcus said quickly, then caught himself. "I mean, yes, but not the way you think. Lyra, I'm human. I'll live maybe 100 years if I'm lucky. You'll live for millennia. Even if you felt the same way about me that I feel about you, what kind of future could we have together?" The princess was quiet for so long that Marcus began to wonder if he had offended her. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but firm. "Marcus, do you know why my people value honor so highly? Because it's the foundation of your society? No. Because honor is what remains when everything else is gone." She turned to face him fully, her patterns now showing the deep sincerity that marked important moments in Zephyrian culture. "My people live for millennia, as you said. We watch stars be born and die. We see entire civilizations rise and fall. Do you know what that teaches us?" Marcus shook his head. "That nothing lasts forever. Not empires, not species, not even love. Everything in the universe is temporary, Marcus. The question isn't how long something will last. The question is whether it's worth having at all." She reached out and took his hands in hers, her skin warm despite its alien nature. "I could live for 2,000 years and never meet another being who affects me the way you do. Or I could have 60 years with you and consider it the greatest gift the universe ever gave me." Marcus felt something shift inside his chest, a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying finally lifting. "When you put it that way." "Besides," Princess Lyranel said, her patterns shifting to mischief, "who says you're only going to live 100 years? My people have been working on life extension technology for centuries. It's one of the benefits of having a very long-term perspective on research." Before Marcus could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps interrupted them. Emperor Vorthak emerged from the crystal pathways, his regal bearing softened by what Marcus recognized as paternal concern. "Forgive the intrusion," the Emperor said. "But there are matters we must discuss." Marcus immediately stood and bowed, but Emperor Vorthak waved away the formality. "Please, Admiral. After what you have done for our people, such ceremonies seem inadequate. Your Majesty, I was only doing my duty as an ally." "No," Emperor Vorthak said firmly. "What you did went far beyond duty. You didn't just save our homeworld. You revolutionized the very concept of interspecies military cooperation. The tactics you employed have already been studied by every major power in the coalition. You've changed the nature of warfare itself." The Emperor's pattern shifted to something Marcus couldn't quite interpret. "Which brings me to why I'm here. The Coalition Council has voted unanimously to offer you a position as Supreme Military Coordinator. Essentially, the highest military rank in known space. You would oversee the defense of 17 different star systems and command resources that dwarf anything any single species has ever assembled." Marcus felt his breath catch. It was an honor beyond anything he had ever imagined. The kind of position that would secure humanity's place in galactic society for generations to come. "However," Emperor Vorthak continued, "there is a condition. The position requires you to renounce your citizenship in any single species and become a citizen of the Coalition itself. You would belong to all worlds and to none." The implications hit Marcus immediately. He would have to give up his human identity, his connection to Earth, everything that had made him who he was. He would become something new, something unprecedented, a being who existed between species rather than within one. Father, Princess Lyranel said quietly, surely there must be another way. I'm afraid not, my daughter. The other species will only accept a human in such a position if that human demonstrates absolute loyalty to the coalition, above all else. It's the price of trust. Marcus looked between the Emperor and Princess Lyranel, his mind racing. The offer was everything he had worked toward and nothing he had expected. To command the forces that would protect billions of beings across dozens of worlds, to shape the future of galactic civilization itself. It was a responsibility that would dwarf anything any human had ever attempted, but it would also mean becoming something other than human. How long do I have to decide? Marcus asked. The council meets again in 7 days, Emperor Vorthak replied. After that, the offer will be extended to other candidates. After the Emperor left, Marcus and Princess Lyranel sat in silence for a long time. The bioluminescent gardens around them pulsed with subdued colors, responding to the weight of the decision that lay before them. What are you thinking? Princess Lyranel finally asked. I'm thinking that 5 years ago I was just a kid who knew some alien languages, Marcus said. Now I'm being offered the chance to become something that's never existed before. And I'm terrified that I'm not worthy of either the offer or the woman I made a promise to. Princess Lyranel smiled, her patterns brightening. Marcus, do you remember what you told me during that first battle? When I asked what you were doing? Something completely insane, Marcus replied with a rueful laugh. Exactly. And it worked because sometimes the universe needs someone crazy enough to try the impossible. She squeezed his hands. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. But don't make the choice based on fear. Make it based on who you want to become. Marcus looked at her, this incredible being who had believed in him when he was nothing more than a young diplomat with big dreams. In her eyes, he saw the same faith that had carried him through 5 years of impossible challenges. I need to talk to my people first, he said finally. Before I can decide what I'm willing to give up, I need to understand what I'm giving up. Princess Lyranel nodded. Then go, I'll be here when you return. Promise? I promise, she said, her patterns showing the deep sincerity that made Zephyrian oaths binding. After all, I have some experience waiting for humans who keep their promises. As Marcus prepared to return to Earth for what might be the last time as a full human citizen, he realized that his greatest adventure was just beginning. The choice he made in the coming days would determine not just his own future, but the future of human-alien relations for generations to come. And somehow, despite the magnitude of the decision, he wasn't afraid anymore. He had learned to trust in something larger than himself, in the bonds that connected all intelligent life across the galaxy. Whatever he chose, he would face the consequences with the same courage that had brought him this far. The young man who had once vowed to wed an alien princess was about to discover just how far that promise would take him. Earth had changed in the months since Marcus had last set foot on humanity's homeworld. The capital city of New Geneva now stretched into the sky with towers that incorporated alien bioarchitecture alongside human engineering. Streets bustled, with beings from a dozen different species, and the air hummed with the energy of a world that had found its place among the stars. Marcus stood in the gardens outside Earth Defense Force headquarters, watching human children play alongside young Zephyrians, whose bioluminescent patterns flickered with joy. It was a scene that would have been unimaginable when he first left Earth as an 18-year-old translator. Now it seemed as natural as sunrise. Admiral Chen, a familiar voice called. Marcus turned to see Fleet Admiral Morrison approaching, his weathered face showing the weight of the decisions he had been forced to make in Marcus's absence. Welcome home, son. Thank you, sir, Marcus replied, falling into step beside his mentor as they walked toward the headquarters building. I have to say, the city looks incredible. The integration of alien technology is happening faster than anyone predicted. That's largely due to you, Morrison said with a slight smile. Your tactical innovations have convinced even the most xenophobic elements of our government that cooperation with alien species is not just beneficial, it's essential for survival. They entered the building and made their way to a conference room where the Earth Defense Council was waiting. Marcus recognized most of the faces around the table. These were the men and women who had shaped humanity's expansion into the galaxy, who had made the hard choices that elevated Earth from a single-planet species to a galactic power. "Admiral Chen," said Director Sarah Blackwood, head of the Xenological Studies Division, "we've reviewed the Coalition's offer. It's unprecedented." "That's one word for it," grumbled General Harrison, a man who had never fully accepted the necessity of alien alliances. "They're asking you to stop being human, Marcus, to become some kind of hybrid creature answerable to no single species." "With respect, General," Marcus replied, "I think you're misunderstanding what they're asking. They're not asking me to stop being human. They're asking me to become something more than human." Director Blackwood leaned forward. "Explain." Marcus had spent the entire journey from Zephyr Prime thinking about this very question. Humanity's greatest strength has always been our adaptability. We take ideas from everywhere, combine them in new ways, and create something that's better than any of its individual components. This position would be the ultimate expression of that trait. "And the downside?" asked Dr. Rebecca Santos, Earth's chief xenopsychologist. "I would have to give up my legal status as an Earth citizen," Marcus admitted. "I would become a citizen of the Coalition itself, with loyalty to all member species rather than to humanity specifically." "Which means you could never come home," General Harrison said bluntly. "Earth would become just another planet to you." Marcus was quiet for a moment, feeling the weight of that truth. "Yes, that's exactly what it means." The room fell silent. Finally, Fleet Admiral Morrison spoke. "Marcus, no one in this room has the right to make this decision for you. But I think we owe you our honest assessment of what it would mean for humanity. Please, if you accept this position, you'll become the most powerful human in galactic history," Morrison said. "You'll have influence over military policy across 17 star systems, command of resources that could protect or destroy entire civilizations. But you'll also become something that's never existed before, a bridge between species." Director Blackwood pulled up a holographic display showing Coalition military structures. "From a strategic standpoint, having a human in this position would guarantee Earth security for generations. No Coalition member would dare attack a world whose citizen holds supreme military command. But," Dr. Santos added, "you would also bear the responsibility for decisions that could affect billions of lives. The stress alone could be overwhelming." General Harrison crossed his arms. "And what happens when human interests conflict with Coalition interests? Where will your loyalty lie?" It was the question Marcus had been dreading, but also the one he had been preparing for. "General, with respect, I think you're still thinking in terms of the old paradigms. In the new galactic order, human interests and Coalition interests are the same thing. We're stronger together than we could ever be apart." "Pretty words," Harrison replied. "But what happens when they're put to the test?" Before Marcus could respond, an aide entered the room and whispered something to Fleet Admiral Morrison. The Admiral's face darkened. "What is it?" Marcus asked. "Intelligence report from the Outer Rim," Morrison said grimly. "The hegemony is mobilizing again. Our analysts believe they're preparing for a major offensive against Coalition territory." Marcus felt his blood run cold. The hegemony was a militaristic alliance of species that viewed the Coalition's cooperative approach as weakness. They had been testing Coalition defenses for months, probing for vulnerabilities. "How much time do we have?" Marcus asked. "Unknown. But if they strike while the Coalition is still reorganizing after the Korthax conflict, they could shatter our alliance before it fully solidifies." Marcus looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leadership, seeing the same realization dawning in their eyes. The Coalition needed unified military command, and they needed it now. The luxury of careful consideration had just disappeared. "Director Blackwood," Marcus said, "I need to know something. If I accept this position, will Earth support my decisions even when they're difficult?" "What kind of difficult?" she asked. "The kind that requires sacrificing short-term advantages for long-term survival. The kind that means sometimes putting Coalition needs ahead of immediate Earth interests." The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Fleet Admiral Morrison spoke. "Marcus, you've never let us down. If you believe this is what's necessary, Then Earth will stand behind you. General Harrison looked like he wanted to object, but Dr. Santos placed a hand on his arm. Tom, look at what he's accomplished. 5 years ago, we were alone in the galaxy. Now we're part of the most powerful alliance in known space. If anyone can navigate the challenges ahead, it's him. Marcus felt the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. The decision that had seemed so personal suddenly revealed itself as something much larger. This wasn't just about his future with Princess Lyranel. It was about humanity's future in the galaxy. I need to transmit my answer to the Coalition Council within the hour, Marcus said. But before I do, I want to say something to all of you. He stood, facing the people who had shaped his understanding of duty and honor. 5 years ago, you sent a young translator on a diplomatic mission because he knew some alien languages. You trusted him with responsibilities far beyond his experience or qualifications. That trust changed not just his life, but the course of human history. Marcus paused, feeling the magnitude of what he was about to say. I'm asking for that trust again. I'm asking you to believe that a human can become something more than human, without losing what makes him human in the first place. Director Blackwood smiled. Marcus, you stopped being just a translator the moment you decided to risk your life for alien allies. You've been becoming something more than human for years. We're just finally ready to acknowledge it. Then you have my answer, Marcus said, and walked to the communication console. The transmission to the Coalition Council was brief. Admiral, Marcus Chen of Earth accepts the position of Supreme Military Coordinator, effective immediately. As the message transmitted across the galaxy, Marcus felt something fundamental shift inside him. He was no longer just Marcus Chen of Earth. He was becoming Marcus Chen of the Coalition, a bridge between species, a guardian of worlds he had never seen. And somewhere in the depths of space, Princess Lyranel was waiting for him to return. Not as the young man who had made a promise, but as the leader he had chosen to become. The transformation was complete. Now came the real test, living up to the faith that so many beings had placed in him, and proving that humanity's greatest strength was not its ability to conquer, but its ability to unite. The boy who had vowed to wed an alien princess was gone. In his place stood a man who had chosen to become a bridge between the stars. 2 years had passed since Marcus Chen accepted the position of Supreme Military Coordinator, and the galaxy had never been more at peace. The hegemony's attempted offensive had been shattered by a coalition response so swift and coordinated that their remaining forces had sued for peace within months. Under Marcus's leadership, 17 different species had learned to fight as one, creating a military force that no aggressor dared challenge. Now Marcus stood in the Observatory of Worlds aboard Coalition Station Alpha, a massive space habitat positioned at the gravitational center of Coalition space. Through the transparent walls, he could see ships from dozens of species coming and going, carrying trade, technology, and ideas between worlds that had once been strangers to each other. Coordinator Chen, came a familiar voice. Marcus turned to see Princess Lyranel approaching, her bioluminescent patterns showing the calm confidence she had developed in her role as Coalition Cultural Attaché. The years had been kind to her. She moved with the grace of someone who had found her purpose in life. Princess, Marcus replied with a smile. Though they both knew the formal titles were more habit than necessity, in private they had moved far beyond such protocols. The council session ended well, I take it? She asked, settling beside him at the observation window. Better than expected. The Vegan Republic has agreed to share their agricultural technologies with the newer coalition members, and the Andorians are establishing trade routes to the Rim worlds. We're not just an alliance anymore, Lyra. We're becoming a true civilization. Princess Lyranel's patterns shifted to gentle amusement. You sound surprised. Did you think your grand experiment would fail? Sometimes, Marcus admitted. When I accepted this position, I knew the theory would work. Different species, different strengths, all working together for mutual benefit. But theory and practice are very different things, and now, Marcus gestured toward the busy space lanes visible through the observatory walls. Now I see Zephyrian bioships carrying Terran musicians to perform for crystalline audiences. I see human engineers working alongside ethereal philosophers to solve problems that no single species could handle alone. We've created something that's never existed before in galactic history, A true coalition of equals. Princess Lyranel said softly. My father still struggles to believe it sometimes. For millennia, the Zephyrian Empire was the dominant power in this sector. The idea that we're stronger as partners than as rulers challenges everything he was taught. Marcus nodded. Change is never easy, especially for long-lived species. But your father has adapted better than most. The way he's integrated coalition protocols into Zephyrian military doctrine has been brilliant. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the dance of ships and the flow of commerce that represented the new galactic order. Finally, Princess Lyranel spoke again. Marcus, do you ever regret the choice you made? It was a question she had never asked directly before, though Marcus could see it had been on her mind for months. Which choice? Accepting the coordinator position? Giving up my Earth citizenship? Or promising to marry an alien princess? All of them, she said quietly. You've achieved everything you set out to do, but at such a cost. You belong everywhere and nowhere. You command the loyalty of 17 species, but can never truly be part of any of them. Marcus considered the question carefully. It was true that his position sometimes felt isolating. He was no longer fully human, but he wasn't Zephyrian or Andorian or any other species either. He existed in the spaces between cultures, translating not just languages but entire ways of thinking. I don't regret it, he said finally, but not for the reasons you might think. Explain. When I was young, I thought the greatest thing I could do was become worthy of you. I studied, I trained, I fought, all to prove that a human could stand beside a Zephyrian princess as an equal. Marcus turned to face her fully. But I was thinking too small. Princess Lyranel's patterns shifted to curiosity. How so? I wasn't trying to become worthy of you, Lyra. I was trying to become worthy of what we could build together. This. He gestured toward the thriving civilization visible around them. A galaxy where species don't just coexist, they elevate each other. And you think that was worth giving up your humanity? Marcus smiled. I didn't give up my humanity. I expanded it. Everything that makes humans special, our adaptability, our curiosity, our stubborn refusal to accept that things can't be better, all of that is still part of who I am. But now it's informed by Zephyrian honor, Andorian precision, ethereal wisdom, and a dozen other perspectives. So you've become something new, Princess Lyranel said thoughtfully. We all have. You're not the same person who first met that young translator 5 years ago. And neither am I. We've grown beyond what our individual species could have made us. Princess Lyranel was quiet for a moment, her patterns cycling through colors Marcus had learned to associate with deep thought. Marcus, there's something I need to tell you. What is it? The Council has been discussing the future of the Coalition. Specifically, they've been discussing succession protocols for the coordinator position. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Are they planning to replace me? No, Princess Lyranel said quickly. Quite the opposite. They want to make the position permanent. With you as the first in a new line of coalition leaders, they're talking about creating a hereditary coordinator position. The implications hit Marcus immediately. Hereditary. That means they expect you to have children who can inherit your position. Children who would be raised from birth to understand multiple species, multiple cultures. Children who would be truly galactic citizens in a way that even you aren't. Marcus stared out at the space lanes, his mind racing. And the only way to have children who could fulfill that role would be to marry someone from another species, yes. Someone whose children would be living bridges between worlds. Princess Lyranel's patterns shifted to something Marcus couldn't quite interpret. The Council has made it clear that they would prefer that species to be Zephyrian. Because of our history together. Because of what we represent. Human innovation and Zephyrian wisdom. A combination that has already proven capable of changing the galaxy. Marcus felt his heart racing. After all these years, all the obstacles they had overcome, it came down to this. Lyra, are you asking me to marry you for political reasons? Princess Lyranel laughed, her patterns brightening with genuine amusement. Marcus Chen, you brilliant fool. I'm not asking you to marry me for political reasons. I'm telling you that the political reasons have finally caught up with the personal ones. She stepped closer, taking his hands in hers as she had in the palace gardens years before. I've loved you since you were that young diplomat who convinced me to fly into battle with him. I would have married you if you had remained a simple translator, and never left Earth. But now we have the chance to build something that will last for generations, a family that embodies everything the Coalition represents. Marcus looked into her violet eyes and saw the same faith and determination that had sustained him through years of impossible challenges. Our children would never have a normal life. They would be born into responsibility most beings can't imagine. They would be born into opportunity most beings can't imagine, Princess Lyra Nell corrected. They would grow up understanding that the universe is vast and wonderful and full of different ways of thinking and being. They would be living proof that cooperation is stronger than competition. And if we fail, if our children can't handle the pressure, if the Coalition falls apart, if the whole experiment collapses, Princess Lyra Nell smiled, then we'll face that failure together, just like we've faced everything else. Marcus, you once told me that sometimes the universe needs someone crazy enough to try the impossible. Are you ready to try the impossible one more time? Marcus looked out at the galaxy they had helped create, at the ships carrying beings who had learned to see former enemies as friends, at the living proof that different species could build something greater together than any of them could achieve alone. Yes, he said, and felt the last pieces of his transformation falling into place. But this time, I'm not doing it alone. 6 months later, Marcus Chen and Princess Lyra Nell were married in a ceremony that brought together representatives from every known intelligent species. The wedding was broadcast across the galaxy, watched by billions of beings who saw in their union a symbol of everything the Coalition represented. But for Marcus, the most important moment came not during the ceremony itself but afterward, as he and his new wife stood together on the observation deck of their new home, a ship designed to carry them between worlds as they worked to nurture the civilization they had helped create. So, Princess Lyra Nell said, her patterns showing contentment and joy. The young lad kept his promise after all. Marcus laughed, pulling her close. More than kept it. I think I might have exceeded it. Just slightly, she agreed, and together they looked out at the stars, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring.